For 2015, car makers want to sell you not only a car, but a bunch of expensive, high-tech features to go along with it. But which new car features are actually worth your money? I'm Stephen Kay, Editorial Director at Bottom Line Publications. Today my guest is auto analyst Carl Brower, Kelley Blue Book Senior Director. Carl's going to help us sort through all of the features out there, some of which are worth your money and some of which may not be. Thank you for coming.
It's good to be here. Let's talk tech.
I'll tell you what my favorite feature is right now, and I mean that not seriously, and that is the artificial engine sounds pumped into the cabin of some very classy cars.
Yes.
They're actually using fake engine sounds. Should we name names here?
Let's name names. I mean, I thought it was kind of a travesty because I think of a brand like BMW as this driver-focused, genuine brand with ultimate driving machine as a tagline. And I find out that one of their ultimate driving machines has falsified engine noises being pumped into the cabin because it's a small engine in this kind of hybrid vehicle, this very expensive i8 performance car that they've just released. But the engine is incapable of making truly impressive engine noises because it's so small, and so they kind of enhance it with the car's audio system. And that to me crosses a line you shouldn't cross as BMW.
So it's the ultimate recording of a driving
Yeah, that's
machine.
right. It's the ultimate fake driving machine.
In terms of features that really do something for you, what would you like to talk about?
I think there's a lot of great things coming down the pike, and I'm excited to see what we're going to have in the next 5 years. I think probably the most interesting one that we're just on the cusp of getting right now is a new interface from Apple called CarPlay that's going to be in multiple models, but it's probably going to launch first in the Hyundai Sonata. And what it basically does is recreate your Apple iPhone interface for the interior touchscreen in the car. And I played with this at the New York Auto Show recently, and when I did, what I learned was there's no learning curve. If you know how to use your Apple phone and all of a sudden you're interacting with your screen in your car, you know everything you need to do, whether it's scrolling up and down to get a contact name, pulling up a map and coming up with directions. It was really amazing, and I realized that when this is available, when this hits, it will redefine in-car interfaces. People who aren't able to get their phone interface in their car are going to get very impatient very quickly when they see their friends' vehicles that do this. And there's an Android version coming too. Android will have the same thing. So eventually you won't have to figure out or worry about figuring out how to use your in-car interface. You'll just get in, plug your phone in, and everything you were just doing on your phone, you'll keep doing in your car.
So you will need to have an Apple phone in order to use this. Mm-hmm. What kind of functions are embedded within this? I'm thinking about heat and air conditioning and things like that, but it sounds like it's really not that. It's more an extension of your telephone.
Yeah, and the heat and the air conditioning, if they were designed right, those should be things you can figure out pretty easily in any car anyways. And you can't in some cars, admittedly, but you shouldn't have to depend on your phone to help you with those. Where your phone comes in is in directions to your next location. Nav systems can be very tricky in a lot of cars to figure out. Contact lists, making phone calls, and listening to your music, all the things you do on your phone. And it's nice to be able to get into your car and all your playlists are the same because you just were using them on your phone or your personal device. And all your contacts are the same, all your destinations are the same. And then, of course, something like Siri, you can literally call out and say, Siri, call home, or Siri, direct me to this location. It's much safer. And again, it becomes this universal thing. One day we'll live in a world where if you know how to use your phone, you know how to use any car's interface because they'll be the same thing.
Now, if you have one of these cars with this feature and you don't have an iPhone, what happens? Do you have blank place on your dashboard and no use for it?
I think there's still all the default systems that the cars are already equipped with. So almost every car either has or can be ordered with a nav system. So if you've ordered a nav system and you don't have an iPhone, then you'll just use the standard navigation controls that the car has already built in and most cars have had for years. It just won't be as seamless.
Or standard Bluetooth, the various generations of Bluetooth.
Yeah, that's becoming almost standardized too, standardized Bluetooth. And this is something that's been a long time coming. As a tech guy, I've been saying this for years. How come I have to get in my car and use a whole different interface than on my phone and start over in terms of music and contacts and locations and all? So everyone knew this was coming. Anyone with any foresight knew that we were going to get there eventually. I just am excited to see it coming. And when I saw it in practice and saw how easy it was and how well it worked, I got excited because I think it's going to be a paradigm shift.
And Android version coming as well.
Android will have it soon too, so you won't be left out. If you have a phone that's a smartphone, you'll have a car interface that mirrors it.
And then there are some interfaces now in cars that are all electronic, and some of them are ridiculously complicated. And as you said, it can even be difficult to figure out how to make the heat higher or lower, turn the air conditioning on and off, or change the radio station.
Right.
But some of them do stand out as being highly functional and you like very much. So what are your favorites there?
You can still have some good interfaces if you get the right cars. My favorite one personally is Uconnect Access, which is the Chrysler system. So all the modern Chryslers utilize it. And I think the layout of the screen, the icons, the power, the speed with which it changes screens, all that is very good. It's very effective. It makes kind of an inherent sense. You still, like in most of these systems, will probably have to use the owner's manual if you're going to do something really advanced. But the basic functions seem to work in an intuitive manner. And that's the hardest thing for these guys to get right. But they got it right in this car.
And that's in Chrysler and Dodge cars, or just
Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, they all use this Uconnect Access.
And that's one that works.
That one's a good one.
Is there another one that works very well?
You know, it gets mixed reports, but I think Cadillac's Q is fine. I think it works pretty well. I like the interface. You know what's nice about Q is it feels upscale. This is a Cadillac user experience. That's what Q stands for. And it feels like this kind of premium experience. The high quality screens, the icons, kind of what you do when you're swiping and moving things around and all. It feels like a premium experience, which it should because it's the Cadillac user experience. And so I feel like it's a good expression of the brand in a still intuitive and inherently easy to use system.
Any versions of it available on any other General Motors nameplates, or still just restricted to Cadillac?
Well, it's a great question because, again, GM, they end up sharing a certain amount of stuff for obvious reasons. And there's the Chevy version. I think it's Chevy MyLink. But the Chevy version has a lot of the similar functionality, things like you can customize the homepage. You know, you can kind of set certain icons in like an easy to access part of the screen, customize it, and you can do that on both the Cadillac and the Chevy. So there's similarities, and the Chevy one works pretty well too.
It does work well.
Yeah.
And that's an affordable price range.
And that's
for the car.
more affordable if you don't want to get the Cadillac.
All right, now driving assist devices, and we have lane departure warning, we have backup cameras, we have self-parking. It's been around a little while. A lot of those features were a little bit rough a few years ago when
Yes.
they came out. I think second generation and even third generations are coming along. So which ones really stand out to you as really working well to provide safety and make driving easier?
There was the parallel parking system that Ford has now on many of their cars, the Escape being one of them. And I think that one works very well. It doesn't require a lot of extra special setup to make it work right. You can essentially drive along a row of cars parked on the street, and if you see a space, you can have the car measure and decide it will fit in and park itself all very seamlessly and quickly. So I like that.
And that's on Ford?
That's on Ford vehicles more and more all the time. The Escape's got it, and the Lincoln MKC has it. I know those two have it.
And it'll be undoubtedly spreading to other
And it'll
models.
get to other models.
So do you have to help at all? The car steers? Does the car accelerate and brake? You just
All you do is
sit
shift
back?
the gears and hold the brake. So you take your hand off the wheel and you literally drive by the open space, and it like makes a measurement before and after the space is available. And then once it says, oh yeah, I can fit in there, then you put the brake on and you listen to its directions. Put the car in reverse, and then you let up on the brake, and it applies the amount of throttle and steers the car, and will back it in. Actually, I think you have to apply throttle too. I think you will apply a certain amount of throttle, but it'll steer the car completely and tell you, okay, now go for the brake, slow down, and all that, and it walks you through it.
Yeah, well, the hardest part of parallel parking is the steering.
It's the steering and the general placement of the car,
Yeah.
and it'll tell
Yeah.
you when to start backing up and when to start the turn and when to unwind
And the car
wheel.
is doing all that for
It's
you.
doing all
So
that
as
for
long
you.
as you can handle
Never
the
touch
gas
the
and the brake, you're good
gas,
to go.
brake, and shifter is all you got to
Yeah,
deal with.
Yeah, okay, good. And what about lane departure? There were also some teething problems with those systems where they were buzzing and beeping all day long, basically. Improved now?
They're better, but it's just hard to get that one right because there's so many circumstances that a car can't recognize that you're intentionally doing and it thinks you're mistakenly doing. And I think that's going to be the one that will be interesting to watch the car manufacturers and the technology suppliers struggle with, because it's just not easy to figure out when the car's doing what you want it to do versus it's doing something you don't want it to do and you need some help.
What about night vision? That was a gee-whiz feature more than a decade ago on
Yeah.
some cars. It disappeared.
Yeah.
And it seems to be making a comeback now. Is it much improved, or is it just another try?
It's much improved because now it's heads up, so you can see it right where you're normally looking. You used to have to look down at the center screen, which really isn't the best place for you to be looking when you're driving.
Heads up, meaning that there's an image projected right on the windshield.
Yeah.
You just have to lower your eyes.
It's in line
with
with your normal line of sight, so you can even really look where you should be looking, and peripherally on the lower part of your vision, you'll see these images. And if something is happening there that you need to know about, it'll kind of alert you.
And it will show you, for example, a deer that's beyond the range of your headlights.
That's running toward the street or already in the street.
Before your eyes can see it,
Yeah,
the car
infrared
will pick it up
will see it
and you can see it
tell
there.
you about it, yeah.
Yeah. Makers who are putting that,
I think Mercedes has probably got the best system right now.
Mercedes, yeah.
Yeah, they've probably got the best night vision system. And you know, it's interesting when we talk about that because we're talking about heads up, and that generally has gotten much better. You know, heads up as a just general feature, night vision or not, has been around for years in various forms from various automakers, but it keeps getting better. And I'm excited by this because I do feel like if you utilize a good heads-up system, it's like a lot of modern conveniences. Once you start to use it and realized how convenient and easy it is to see your speed without looking away from the road at all, you get addicted to it, and you don't want to be in a car that doesn't have it. And thankfully, now it's not just speed. It'll put up, you know, your next turn for your nav system. You've got multicolor heads-up displays.
all there on the windshield.
Yeah, and you're looking up, and it'll say, okay, now, you know, get off at this exit, and you haven't looked down at all. It's right in front of your eyes to where you're going to get off.
One of my favorite features is adaptive cruise control. And it's not a new feature, but it still hasn't crept down to most cars, which is surprising. It's been around for probably 15 years, maybe more.
Yeah.
This is where you can set speed, and the car will automatically keep a distance between you and the car in front of you. It'll slow down, brake when necessary, speed up to your maximum speed.
Yeah.
Why aren't we seeing that on more cars?
You know, it is starting to. You're right. It's only been very recently, but I'm just starting to see that. I was in a Hyundai Sonata recently, and it had radar cruise control. And that's a mainstream sedan, you know. So you're starting to see it in family sedans. You still haven't seen it really in economy cars yet. But like Nav, which took a while to get down to economy cars, but now it's there. We'll see it there eventually. But it's a great feature. It's a really nice feature because having cruise control, now it seems so weird to have cruise control that just sets a specific speed and you're, you know, closing fast and about to rear end somebody and it just drives you right into it. You know, that's what cruise control was from the 60s until a couple of years ago.
The adaptive cruise control is a terrific safety feature. As you're driving, no matter how you try it, momentarily, even if you're looking at the radio, take your attention away.
Exactly.
The car will slow you down.
Yeah.
Any other wild card features that you'd like to mention, either great features or maybe not so great features?
Non-wild card, but kind of a cool feature is this leg-induced rear hatch opening. You know, it seems so simple and maybe even silly at first. You know, you're waving your leg under your rear bumper, but when you have your hands full of stuff, everyone knows that all of a sudden it's like, where's the keys? Which hand are they in? What do I have to set down to get to them? And now you don't have to deal with that. You can literally get the back open and set the stuff down.
And
inside.
what vehicles are?
You know, I think the Flex has that.
Ford Flex.
And there's some luxury vehicles now. I just saw, I think it was one of the Mercedes has it too. So it's starting to expand beyond Ford, but Ford had it first.
And if a cat walks behind your vehicle, does your hatch pop open?
Smart enough to know, and that's always the thing you got to worry about with luxury features is that sometimes they're not executed as well as they should be. For instance, reverse cameras are a great thing, and most cars now have them, and I think they're a great idea for child safety. But I can get real frustrated when I'm backing out of my driveway and I realize that the heat and the climate control system comes blasting on, or someone calls me on the phone, or you know the radio is too loud. Well, think about it, Steve. Where are most of your controls for most of these systems?
Yeah, right where the screen is.
They're in the screen, and when you're in reverse, the screen overrides for reverse camera, and nothing else can be done. So you're back now, you're driving, all of a sudden, the heat starts blasting. It's like, and you're trying to stop, and it's like, well, now what do? I can put the car in drive or in park, and even then it'll take a few seconds because it'll keep that reverse image up in the screen even for a few seconds. When you've put it in drive, you start driving away up until you get to like 10 miles an hour. So you have to get yourself out of the reverse backup camera screen before you can control all these other things that you may all of a sudden need to control. Someone's calling and you want to pick the phone up, and you can't because the camera's up there instead.
Yeah, that's the maddening thing too, is that you're still looking behind you when you're driving forward. You can't get to your controls.
Exactly. So, you know, the execution of a lot of these technologies still needs something to be desired. And of course, you got to watch out for things like variable steering, where the car is deciding whether you should or shouldn't steer as hard as you've turned the wheel. And that makes sense in theory. You know, the idea is like, well, he's turning the wheel so hard he might skid, so I'm not going to let the car change direction that quickly. Well, what if there's a kid that just ran in front of me? I think I'd rather have the ability to turn the car rapidly and maybe go into a skid that sends me off-road or hits a parked car than impact a pedestrian. And that's where I get a little worried, because we're going to get to this point where cars have more and more driver control and can intervene when it thinks you're making a mistake. But it's going to get stuff wrong sometimes, and we're going to have to get through this learning curve, just like we talked about first gen of a lot of things. The first gen, a lot of these perception systems where the car's trying to make decisions on its own, it's going to get stuff wrong. We all know it. And hopefully there aren't accidents or tragedies in the process.
Rain sensing wipers have been around for decades. They still don't work that way.
They're still not right.
Yeah. Yeah, and now they're trying to incorporate much more into that almost thinking on the part of the car, where it actually takes over control of the vehicle from you and speeds you up, slows you down, turns you.
I got a false warning on a front collision in a car because I was driving a vehicle and there was a shadow being cast by a tree into my lane, probably 300 or 400 feet ahead of me. And I'm driving up, and I'd heard the warning. You come up to a car that's parked at a stoplight, and you're coming up maybe quicker than the car's comfortable with, and it'll give you like a little forward collision warning. Well, I was driving on a clear road. There was nothing solid in front of me, but there was a shadow from a tree that obviously the car's forward vision sensor thought looked like a car. And it started to go into the warning mode, and it was very funny because the warning mode was like a standard 3 beep alarm, and it went 1.5 and stopped. So it figured out its mistake. But my first thought was, okay, right now all this car does is make noise when it thinks you're making a mistake. What happens when they start slamming on the brakes and or steering because they think you're making a mistake?
And there's a car behind you, and the brakes are suddenly...
Yeah, now I'm into full brake mode, slam mode, for no reason whatsoever because the car got tricked.
So we'll keep track of the systems that actually work best, and we'll stay in touch with you on that. And maybe you can put in a word for me. A feature that I'd like to see again on cars is bumpers that can actually bump without having to be
without shattering.
Without shattering. Yeah, you think we'll ever see those again?
The last time they tried that, they had these big, ugly rubber grommets on the cars in the early 70s. So it's
pistons.
kind of so it seems like you can't win. Either they're durable and they're terrible looking, or they actually integrate with the body and they shatter upon impact.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much, Carl. Very interesting.
Yeah, great talking to you, Steve.